morning, everybody. It's Myron at Zuk's Off-Road. Today we're going to be talking about a 1.6 8-valve harness. I'm not going to give you any close-ups of it. I'm just going to say what the collars are. Because if I do your harness, it's all going to be labeled. But today what I want to do is go over all the connectors on a 1.6 8-valve. This is Mr. Henry's motor. It's going to be turboed propane. So it has H-beam rods and it has ARP head studs. But knowing that it's going to be turbo propane, we have to break it in on gasoline first. If you didn't know that, you can't take a remanufactured motor, run it on propane. You have to have a used motor or a broken motor. Propane doesn't lubricate. Gasoline is basically petroleum. As it goes through the system, it lubricates. Gas is actually lubrication and cooling. And of course, when you're breaking a motor in, you need that extra lubrication on the walls and cylinders. So a long time ago, 2008, we found out at a event in Texas that a fella was having problems with John's foreign engines. About every 400 miles, the remanufactured engine would cease. And after about 3 engines, John asked the guy, like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, propane." So it kind of got around to everybody right away. Don't break in motors with propane. And I know some guys that, well, I'll just make bigger gaps, I'll bore oversized, I'll make it looser. That's okay, it just smokes. You know, motors are tight for a reason. But anyways, we got to break this motor in, so we're hooking up an EFI system that I sold to another customer. So we're doing the EFI testing, and we're breaking this motor in. We'll run about 100 gallons of gasoline through it here on the engine stand. We'll vary the RPMs quite often. And so I'm doing 2 things at once here. This takes a lot of time to hook things up. So let's go ahead and get into this, okay? So basically, we're going to give you a wire that's really long. And in my instructions, this is number 4. And for you, think of it as pink-black. I'm just going to say it's pink-black. There's only one pink-black wire, and that's the positive of the fuel pump. And when we do the harnesses, we leave that really long. So just going down here, we're going to have a 3-wire manifold absolute pressure MAP sensor. All the 1.68 valves from 1989 to 90. That's one version. I'll talk about that in a second. And then the 91 and 95, the second version, all of them have maps. This is how the computer knows that the engine is actually running. Cute little component. It's the only one that has vacuum and electric. So it's measuring the vacuum in the engine. If it isn't the function of it, that's what I wanted to go over, the function of everything today. The function of this is that if the engine's not running, the computer knows. And if the computer knows it's not running, it does things like shut off the fuel pump. That's a safety thing. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he goes, "Yeah, I've got a 1.68 valve fuel injected, but the harness is kind of messed up, so I have to flip a switch to get the fuel pump to come on." That isn't how it's supposed to be. If you get in an accident in that car and you don't shut that switch off, can you imagine emptying the tank of gasoline in the accident scene? Bad deal, really bad deal. So I really like to have the computers run the fuel pump in the tank. Or outside the tank. I like it to be shut off by the computer if there's an issue. Okay, so that's the map. Now let's go over here. Red and black and gray and yellow. This is going to be your air temp sensor. On all of you Suzuki engine guys on the 1.6s, remember red, black, with gray, yellow is usually the air temp sensor. Same on the 16 valves, but we're not going to talk much about those today. Now, I do want you to know that for whatever reason, sometimes Suzuki ran out of gray, yellow, and so on the schematics it'll say gray, yellow, or brown. So if you have a red with the black stripe and a brown, that's still going to be your air temp sensor. The air temp sensor on a throttle body, it senses the air coming in through the air ram horn and into the intake. So what's going into the engine, air temperature wise, the computer wants to know that. Why? Because it's got electric choke, and it's got water temperature, and it's got air. So it uses all of these things to start the car high idle, shut that off, go back down to low idle. So that is your air temp sensor. Now the water temp sensor is also right next to it, and this is something you may not know, but if you look, your air temp sensor is high, your water's low, so inside of an intake manifold, there's like two levels. Water's on the bottom, that's why your freeze plugs are on the bottom, air's on the top. So our colors for that are going to be red with a yellow stripe, and it's going to be gray yellow, or it's going to be brown again, because again, that's an interchangeable color on the schematics. The green red with the blue black, this is your purge valve for the charcoal can. You can use the Samurai charcoal can, and you do want the purge to work on any of your EFI installs, because the electric fuel pump makes air. Think of it a burping a baby. When the baby's just sucking that nipple, it is getting air, and that air makes the baby burp. Well, what happens in a gas tank? It can't burp. It can't purge out that pressure. The pressure will build up in a gas tank so high that the return line won't flow in. It's like the liquid will not flow back into the tank, and then you open up the tank, whoosh, and everything works again. So ways around that are you can drill the gas cap. The new modern gas caps, really a problem. They take a lot more suction than the older systems, and so the purge is really important to keep, even if you are using the Samurai charcoal can. Now, this will change between the different versions, but typically your injector is going to be red and it's going to be yellow. So here in this case we have red and yellow. The other wires over here will change in color, but they go to what's called the throttle positioning sensor. Now typically your injector and your TPS on some models will all be joined together in one connector, but on some of the models, the earlier ones and the Samurai, you will find that the connector for just the injector is just totally separate, which is okay, still same thing, still works just fine. Okay, up here we have the IAC. IACs on all the Suzuki engines, 8 valve, 16 valve, they have green black with blue with the black stripe. That is your IAC, idle air controller, and that's a mechanism inside here that has water go into it, and it will open a plunger. I've talked about this before. It's what the wax pellet, but there's no wax in this thing. There's no pellet. It's just basically a spring and a rubber plug that goes into a hole, and so that's your idle air controller there. We have not got the water hooked up, and we don't have some of the VSSs, which are vacuum solenoid switches. Also, VSS means vehicle speed sensor, so you got to know what you're dealing with here. If you're dealing with something electronic, VSS, that's vehicle speed sensor. If you're dealing with something with vacuum, that's a VSS, vacuum solenoid switch. Now, for the vacuum solenoid switches, which are not on this motor right now because we're putting this together on the stand, you're going to have two different color wires. You're going to have green with white, and you're going to have green with yellow. Green with white is known as your throttle up. This is a vacuum solenoid that will pull back the high idle. That is located on the back here. It is a dash pot that always is on until the computer says, okay, open up the valve, and it sucks this plunger back so that the cam of the butterfly can go to the real idle, and that's how it's high at first and then it drops down low. We're going to move on now. The green with the yellow, this one here, this is your EGR. Now EGR, emission gas reduction, is what that is. So let's think about that for a second. What is an EGR? Well, it reduces smog. Okay, it's a smog device. How does it do that? Well, it does it by taking exhaust air out of the exhaust manifold. I'll show that to you when we get on the other side. It pushes back into the head through all of these little holes. It goes behind each of the valves, and then it connects to the intake through little tunnels, and then there's a valve right here that when the computer says you're going fast enough, it simply opens this up, and that junk that was down in the crankcase, that smoke, what are we talking about here? We're talking about unburnt petroleum is what we're talking, unburnt gasoline, the blow-by, all that stuff. It's going to go back into the motor, into the intake manifold, mix with new gas, new air, and this is a continued recycled burn of junk in your engine. I am not a fan of EGRs. And on this old system, yeah, you delete it, you'll get a code. Now this particular one is a giveaway. It's a California model. This is a heat temperature probe that goes down into the EGR. You won't see this on 99 out of 100 of these engines, but when you do see it, you know that's a California only, so that it can throw a code if the EGR is not working. And in California, you cannot get a smog certificate if you have a check engine light on. And so this is designed by Eisen to turn on the engine light if that doesn't have the right temperature in it. Why would it not have the right temperature? Oh, that's easy. The whole system's clogged up with goo. The only way to get that goo out is to, like if you took your EGR off, you'll see two holes, and it'll be packed full of tar, which is unburned fuel. Well, that junk was going in your engine until it clogged up. So I really have no problem deleting EGRs. Just don't tell the EPA that. Okay, so let's see what else we have on this side. Let's see. Oh, let's talk about the black yellow wire, because I was starting to connect that up. This one's really a cool wire, done through all of the Suzukis, so it's easy to identify. The black yellow wire is what's going to engage the solenoid to start the starter, start turning the motor. The electronic fuel injection systems use that same wire to tell the computer you're starting the car, and it'll make the injector go rich. So I call this the E-choke right here. So when I'm cranking, there's 12 volts on the black yellow wire. It's engaging the solenoid, but it's also connected to the computer. So for you guys that are doing the swap of the 168 into the 13 Samurais, you're going to take your harness, donor harness, black yellow, and you're going to connect it to the black yellow that goes to the solenoid. So when you turn the key on the Samurai harness, it's going to start the engine and it's going to tell the computer to go rich on the injector. Real quick, let me just look and see if there's anything else that I missed on this side. Distributor. So in the 92 to 91, it is a smart distributor with a pulse, and it's going to be 3 wires. A lot of times you guys call me, and gals, and you go, I got a 1.6, and I go, okay, what year? I don't know. Is it 8 valve or 16 valve? I don't know. So I have to describe it to them, and when I get to the distributor plug, it's very easy, because there's either 3 wires, and typically it's got 4 connectors, but only 3 wires. And if it's an OBD2, which are only 16 valves, it'll have 7 wires. So it's pretty easy for me to ask people, hey, do you have a coil pack? This is what a coil pack looks like. See if I can find one. It's got the coil, but it's more square, and it has an igniter on it. We're going to talk about that when we get on the other side, because again, we're just setting this up right now. Oh, sorry, Mike. A lot of you didn't know that there's a contest going on, and I can't tell you the rules because it's a secret contest, but it has to do with Mike. So if you figure it out, you can make a thread, post it, say something. Hey, by the way, that last video I did about asking questions, really getting some good questions. Some that are like, hey, why did you do this when you built your stuff? And I had to explain something technically, and really complimented the guy, because it must have taken a Herculean effort to increase a 5/8 inch hole to whatever size he blew it out to for a bigger shackle on our bumper. Because I was explaining to him, it's 36,000 pounds of shear. That's like, 10 cars. So I made the bolt big enough. That's not the problem. Okay, let's see. Distributor. So what we have with the distributor, blue, black, ground, and the pulse wire, which is usually white on the Suzukis. Now I'm going to talk about blue-black. Blue-black is a very interesting power wire. And so is the gray with the yellow or brown. We talked about that earlier. So this is how 12 volts gets to all the components. It gets to it either on the blue-black or it gets to it on the gray-yellow. So the blue-black comes from the main relay on all of the EFI systems except for Samurai. Samurai doesn't do it that way. But all of the sidekicks, because that's what we're talking about, all the trackers, The blue-black comes from the black-red on the main relay. That black-red has power on it 24/7, forever. It's always sitting there. And when you turn the key on, it closes the main relay if the computer's functioning, and that will switch the power 12 volts to the blue-black. And then from there what it does is it goes through the component and the computer measures the voltage coming back. That's how it all works. And if it isn't the right voltage, that'll trigger a code, which is basically a check engine light. So that is the distributor for the 1.6 8 valve 91 to 95, and I want you to know that the 89 to 90, I'll bring it up, it's only 2 wires. It's just a basic distributor with vacuum advance. The 8990, really cool EFI system. I call it the bastard popcorn system because it's half EFI and it's half not EFI. It uses a regular coil. It uses a regular distributor with vacuum advance. It doesn't control the timing. You can change the timing on the 8990. So that, to me, that's the best motor to play around with cams and turboing and stuff like that, because you can play with it. Once you get into the fuel injection with 3 wires or 7 wires, listen, it's called closed loop. Closed loop means that the system cannot be programmed. So all of those computers that Suzuki, well, Suzuki didn't build them, most of them are Mitsubishi. So those computers that were made by Mitsubishi for Suzuki, for their fuel system, they're closed loop. You can't plug into them, you can't change them. So trying to turbo these is hit and miss. You fight it, you tweak it. Every day you play with it. One day it works, the next day the humidity changed or the temperature changed, and you have to tweak it again. There are ways to fool this system. You can do a propane injector. You can change to Sniper, you can change to Mega Squirt, you can get rid of the Samurai old 30-year-old EFI, go to more modern EFI, then plug your laptop into it, then boost it. And now's a really good time to tell you, this engine has H-beam rods, and it has some very expensive pistons from a company called Silverlight, which hasn't had these pistons for over a year now. Those are my favorite pistons for turboing, and H-beam rods are going to hold up in this engine. 1.6 engines, all of them, have a tendency to throw rods for dumb reasons. High RPM, low oil, just boom. You're driving down the freeway, you hear clack, 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 boom, and it's all, So they throw rods. That's why we always put H-beam rods in our 1.6 8-valve turbos. Once this is propane, it'll be around 147 horsepower from what my customers say. My favorite comment was, I used to be in the back of the pack, and now my Toyota buddies and my Nissan buddies and my Jeep buddies, they're way behind me. And that guy really loves that turbo. Okay, I think I covered everything on this side that's important, so let's go on the other side and talk about that. Getting back to that gray wire with the yellow stripe, that power wire comes out of the computer. It is fed into the computer on the blue-black. So just look at it like this. Red-black is on all the time. And then you turn the key on, the main relay closes. That power jumps over to the blue-black and goes everywhere. And then it goes into the computer and comes out on a gray, yellow, or brown wire and does things like the O2 sensor. Samurai had a single O2 sensor, and the guys put the wrong intake on. They don't know yet, but we'll be taking this O2 sensor out and putting in the correct 3-wire. Now, the 91 to 95 has what's called the coil pack. It's a coil. It basically is a transformer. 12 volts go in, and it's the wires go around, and the atoms jump over to the other wires, and this comes out somewhere around 10,000 volts. I could be wrong, but let's just say it's a lot of voltage. If you've ever been shocked by this, your teeth can hurt for a few minutes. Now, it uses an igniter, which has sent a signal from the computer based on the white wire on the cam sensor. So as the cam pulses, the igniter comes in and says, okay, send the spark, send the spark, send the spark. All of that works in conjunction. So our igniter wires are brown and white, ground and orange signal from the ECU. Our connector for the coil pack is black and white, and if you have ever heard me talk about this, black and white is your ignition system. The problem with the Samurai is People look for a radio source, an amp source, accessory source. There's so much things we can buy now that are just electronic junk. But basically black white is overloaded on the Samurai. That's your ignition circuit. And so I do it a little bit differently than some of the other companies. When I'm doing my harnesses, I'm going to give you more power for the black white, and I'm going to take relieve some of the power off of the Samurai conversion by getting rid of the ignition wire there in how many places it goes. I'm not getting rid of it, I'm just taking some of the load and moving it over here. So that's your coil pack, that's your igniter. Now all of these have what's called a noise filter. In this case, the brown-white wire connects to the noise filter, connects to the igniter. The noise filter is the true ground for the path of the electronics. You cannot ground a coil pack or an igniter. It has to go through the noise filter. The path going to ground is the brown-white. You won't find a lot of brown-white wires in the harnesses of Suzuki, and if you do, it's the path for the distributor and the coil to go to ground. So it does have its own ground wire, and of course that means that this has to be in, and then you have to have a good ground for that. Now how I do that relief of the power on the Samurai is I put in a second fuse block. And what I do is I leave you a few extra wires, key on, a few extra wires for power in the future, and the 3 fuses here, they're running this whole show. So this is the way I do it, and I can explain that to you if you need be. Okay, so a lot of people, I saw this recently, I saw this on Facebook. What is this blue wire with the orange stripe? This is a grounding wire for the pressure sensor on the power steering pump. So in the Sidekicks, when you strain the pump, because the pump is weak on Sidekicks, I know lots of you have the Sidekick power steering and you love it. Here in Arizona, you won't see them too often. We're getting our big tires in cracks and rocks, and we're going against things and stressing the pump. The boxes are great on the Sidekick and Tracker, but the pumps are weak. They're really low pressure. And so what Suzuki designed here was that when the pump was straining, it would hit a pressure switch, it would ground this wire, it would idle the motor up, even if you weren't on the gas pedal, and so that your steering would work better. So for buggy people, well, we never cut this out, but for buggy people, we always say, hey, if you need an idle up, put this on a switch. That's all it is. You just ground it, and then the idle kicks up from the computer. That's kind of a cool little thing. We also do on all of our harness number 5. And, I threw these numbers in once in a while because it's just in my head. But basically what we have here is black, white, and we have purple, yellow. This is for a check engine light because, as you know, these ECUs have codes. Now, what it does is that you have a DTC plug, and it's somewhere in this harness. They're in all the harnesses. I haven't seen it yet, but it's around here somewhere. And basically you put a bobby pin in or a paper clip and you short it out, and then this will, when you turn the key on, this will start flashing a code. Kind of like Morse code, just so you get the idea. It's long dashes, short dashes. I've explained that before, and by now you better know how to read codes, because a lot of people text me and go, what does 13 mean? Or 12 or whatever? And I go, well, you could Google it. It's so cool. You put any code and you go Suzuki number 12. Well, it comes back as that's normal. That's okay. That's the code you want. But anyways, there's about 30 codes that come out of here. Now, I mentioned the black white. The black white is your ignition, so that when, in other words, you turn the key on, that's what energizes black white. And I've talked about this before too. It isn't that Suzuki was trying to save money, but everything they did was as cheap as possible to keep that car $8,025 when it came here, which by today's standards is about $21,000, $22,000. In other words, money's becoming worthless, and we need more of it to, wheelbarrows to buy a loaf of bread. That actually is history. Germany pre-World War II. It literally took a wheelbarrow full of paper money, deuce marks, to buy a loaf of bread. That's what can happen in hyperinflation. So anyways, this is our check engine light. Another one I want to show you is we always do the tack. Tack is so cool on Suzuki. Suzuki always had plug and play, which means if you don't have a tack in your car, you can get a cluster that has a tack and you can put it in and plug it in, and all of a sudden the tack works. You don't have to add anything. Anyways, that's a brown wire, and that comes from the noise filter. So as the pulsing of the signals coming through the noise filter to get to ground, there's some electronics in here, and it separates a clean signal for the tack and then goes and lets the voltage go into ground and get back on its path. All right, let's see if there's anything else here that I haven't covered yet. Okay, here's the DTC. DTC, Diagnostic Trouble Code Connector. In these models, it's going to have blue, yellow, it's going to have purple, it's going to have blue, red, and it's going to have black. Black is ground. So real quick, if you want to flash codes, it's blue, yellow to black. Turn the key on, your engine light will flash. If you want to freeze time it, because this timing is handled by the computer, you would short out blue, red to black, start the car, time it, shut the car off, pull the pin, start it again, check it. You have to tell the computer, hey, I'm going to change the timing. I got to give you base setting. If you just go change the timing on this engine, it will change by itself. The computer is like, whoa, 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 that's not the base. I'm going back to the base. So you always have to freeze time it. Obviously the two connectors, I'm not going to go over each one of these wires, but all of your connectors are going to be green, yellow on these models. This is really important. Main relay, fuel pump relay. I am doing this video today because I bet you this week I talked to 5 people about these relays, at least 5. So you identify the main relay by the black-red wire. There's only one. Now it goes through the whole car, it goes through the clutch, it goes through the automatic transmission, safety neutral switch, but black-red is always 15 amps, power all the time. And when you turn on the ignition, black-white, it's going to close the switch in here through that small blue wire. The computer does that. The computer case doesn't have to be grounded, but the computer has ground wires, and they have to be really good, because that little blue wire right there, if it can't ground, it won't close the main relay, and then it won't put power on everything else. Fuel pump relay is separate. The reason why the fuel pump relay is separate is for safety reasons. If the engine is not running, the computer will shut off the ground path, which is the small pink wire. This will release this switch, and the power will stop on your pink black. I brought that up earlier in the video. Pink black is always plus post on the fuel pump relay. VSS. Usually yellow, and I always like to use yellow when I'm doing a vehicle speed sensor. A vehicle speed sensor is basically a reed switch encased in vacuum, outer space vacuum, and so that an atom can jump. Here's a reed switch. So as a magnet goes by, a little spark jumps from here to here. Now this is much smaller than my fingers, but magnet goes by, atom jumps off the magnet, gets here and closes that switch, and that just sends a pulse. It pulses. So the faster you go, the faster your speedometer, more pulses. Why? Because it tells the injector, hey, we're going fast, give it more fuel. And of course, it works in conjunction with the TPS, throttle positioning sensor. Okay, let's see, did I do anything else? Vehicle speed sensor I covered. Hey everybody, I think I got this one. I think I'm pretty happy with that video. Okay, so I like to close my videos with go wheeling, be safe, have fun, and please subscribe. Subscriptions picked up again. Maybe because we got back to doing videos on a regular basis, probably why. So we're going to try to kick that back up. Don't forget to share the videos. Go to that video that says, hey, ask Myron a question. Don't ask me any questions on this video about electronics. Go to the one I'm trying to build up, one video with all the questions so that people can go down and look. And with all that, I'm going to say, Go wheeling, be safe, have fun, and I love you guys. Thank you very much for watching the videos. Bye. Adapters. We've got them ready for you. We just got to clean these up, put them in boxes.
I wasn't ready when you
Oh,
started
you looked in
talking.
that camera. I thought you were ready, and it's quiet now. Are you good?
I'm ready now.
Great. Okay, I'm going to cut it again, and then I'm going to pound it off. Now, for you fellas, good morning, Suzuki community. It's Myron at Zuk's Off-Road, and